what does your sign say? And he said, 18 days. And I was like, what do you mean? He says, oh, I went online, and I read about how in Cairo, they stayed in the square for 18 days until Mubarak stepped down. And so I figured that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to be out here for 18 days. And I said to myself, something good's going on here, right? Because that's the first lesson from Wisconsin. Big mistake that labor and that progressives have made for the last 40, 50 years. We watched Martin Luther King Jr. lead that incredible March on Washington in 1963. And we thought, okay, we got it. We roll the buses to Washington, we have a one-day demonstration, and we get the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. That's pretty good. So that's it, one-day demonstration. Power figured that out. They figured out that we come and go, and then it's done. What these smarter-than-me people figured out in Madison is the way to win is to come one day, and then to come the next day, and then to come the next day, and you figure out how long power is going to be there, and you say, we will be there one day longer. Critical lesson. Keep coming. Now, the next day, we got that 8,000. That was pretty good. I'm feeling, I like talking to 8,000 people. I didn't admit that I had thought they wouldn't show up. So the next day, well, it was 20,000. And the day after that, it was 40,000. And here's your second lesson from Wisconsin. On that day, the members of our state Senate, the Democratic minority, they didn't have the power to stop the bill with a vote, but they had the power to leave the Capitol and deny the Republican majority a quorum. And the Democratic state senators were sitting in that Capitol, and they looked out the window. And they weren't all good. I want to tell you, I have surprising news for you. I have shocking news for some of you. Not all Democrats are completely down with the labor struggle. I know it's shocking. Some of them actually prefer to dine with CEOs than dedicated trade unionists, especially if the CEOs show up with big checks. And so these were not all perfect players in our Capitol, but they're sitting there on that day, and there were 40,000 of us outside on the edge of the Capitol, and they looked at those Republican leaders inside the Capitol, and they scratched their chins, and they scratched the back of their head, and they said, well, I can either be a cog in the machine that is going to destroy unions in Wisconsin and set a tone that will go across this country, or I can remember why, long ago in the deepest recesses of my memory, why I became a Democrat. And it's something about Franklin Roosevelt, and it's something about Harry Truman, and it's something about trade unions. Oh yeah, Democrats are supposed to be on the side of the working people. And they stood up and they walked out of that Capitol and they denied the machine, the power, the order, the organization it needed to destroy unions in our state. Democrats became Democrats because 40,000 trade unionists stood outside the Capitol demanding that they be. My goodness. Now we asked the ultimate sacrifice of them. These Wisconsin legislators had to go and spend 3 weeks in Illinois. If many of you don't know regional divides as well, because that would have, in Wisconsin, that's a gut-busting line. Although Illinois was so nice, we forgave them for the Bears. It wasn't hard. We beat them going into the Super Bowl. But well, it wasn't hard beating them either, I might add. Although I do know that next year it could get a little rough. We understand. But I will tell you that the Packers trade unionists stood on the side of the workers. They actually sent a statement down after. Next day, outside the Capitol, 50,000 people showed up. And the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who has been an absolutely outstanding supporter of this movement. He came up, you know, no big rigmarole, no big show. He said, what can I do? Because our rallies were so disorganized, so unplanned. We said, well, you want to speak at our rally? You bet. And I want to tell you something. If you can imagine, all these rallies up to that point had just been local folks talking, teachers and nurses and public employees. Here comes the Reverend Jesse Jackson through that crowd. And Wisconsinites did the only thing they know how to do. They started chanting, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because we were so thrilled that somebody from outside had come to join us. And Reverend Jesse Jackson got up there and he said, he looked out over that crowd and he said, this isn't a labor rally anymore. This is a Gandhi moment. This is a King moment. This is a civil rights moment. Labor rights are human rights. What we are fighting for here is something so much bigger than unions in Wisconsin. What we are fighting for here is something fundamental about America. And that crowd rose with such energy and such joy on that 15-degree night, freezing cold weather, and the next day, 100,000 of us came to that Capitol. And it kept on happening. Day after day after day, tens of thousands of Wisconsinites showing up at our Capitol again and again and again because we knew something amazing, which is that if we kept coming, even though every pundit and every politician would tell us it didn't matter, if we kept coming, we would stop them. And finally, on one night, they got so scared of our power, so scared of our masses, that they went in and they tried to push that bill through. They pushed it through. They announced at 6 o'clock they're going to pass the bill. Went out on radio. You know, we had this wonderful thing. This is a third lesson I'm going to give you here of these movements. Facebook, Facebook, Facebook. Stop whining about Limbaugh. Stop whining about Fox. Get on Facebook. It trumps them all. Because the word went out that they were about to pass the bill. It went out on some of our local radio stations, but very little, not the big media stuff. You've never seen anything like it. People ran out of their houses forgetting to close the door. Moms came running to the Capitol holding their babies. People came driving up toward the Capitol. They ditched their car on the side of the curb and jumped out, forgetting to turn the car off. They ran to the Capitol. By the time, even though they had this tiny window, by the time the legislature took the bill up, 7,000 people were standing outside the Capitol, banging on the doors, chanting, "Let us in." These were not all union members. They were ordinary working people from across Madison and from out in the county who had come to be there because they believed in people power. And they came to that Capitol, and it was exactly as the founders intended. At Lexington and Concord, when the Minutemen came, alerted that the king was going to attack their rights, they knew that they couldn't wait for someone else to come defend them. They would do it themselves. They surrounded this Capitol, 7,000 of them, and finally they found a bathroom window that was open, and they started going into that Capitol. And by the time the state Senate voted, the Capitol was filled at every level with people chanting, "Kill the bill, kill the bill." Those state senators got so scared, so freaked out, that they passed the bill in too quick a time before the open meetings law allowed them to do so. And you want to know something? People don't put these pieces together. But it is our people power. It is that mobilization of trade unionists and their allies that caused them to screw up so badly that now a judge in Wisconsin has ordered that the law not be implemented because it was passed illegally. That's the next lesson of this thing. You keep coming, and even if they tell you you're losing, you don't listen to them. You listen to your heart, you listen to your mind, you listen to the history of this movement, and you say, no, if we put ourselves there, we can stop them. And they are so screwed up now, so in trauma and trial. The judge said, you can't implement the bill. They went ahead and implemented it. So we don't listen to judges. We won an election. We don't have to listen to judges. The law does not apply to us. They said it once. The judge put it down again. They said it twice. The judge put it down again. Yesterday, the judge said, if you don't follow the law, I'm going to start fining and arresting people. And you know what? Governor Walker blinked and he said, we're backing off. We're not implementing. The fact of the matter is, we're winning a battle that we could not have won. We're winning a battle that we could not have won. And this afternoon, in 1 hour and 11 minutes, Wisconsinites will file the first recall petitions to remove state senators who voted to pass that bill. We will have elections this year to take them out of their offices. So I'll tell you something. I'm telling you, that's the next lesson, by the way. Right? You keep coming, you keep doing all this, and then if they don't listen to you, you remember, you reward your friends and you punish your enemies. You remove them from office using the power of the ballot box, and you don't wait till the next election. The progressives gave us the power to recall and remove officials who sin against the body politic, who attack our rights, not 4 years from now, not 2 years from now. We remove them immediately because they do not have a right to retain those offices. And that's what's happening in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Ohio. They passed this law in Ohio, a similar law the other day. Do you know, they passed it on Wednesday. Do you know it started on Thursday? Ohio has a veto referendum. They allow the citizens to petition to put any bill passed by the legislature on the ballot, and the petitioning began on Thursday. Ohio is going to have a referendum in November, and the people are going to do what their representatives failed to do. They are going to vote this law down, and they are going to say, no, Ohio is a union state. But let me tell you, let me close out here by telling you the most important thing of all. This is a movement, not of Wisconsin, not of Ohio, not of Michigan, not of New Jersey, but of this whole country. And it is a movement, and maybe we should call it the April Fool's movement. It's a movement where we're going to surprise all those folks who told us that we were finished, that we didn't have power, that we didn't have the ability to push back. And it's a movement where we're going to undo the lies of our media and the lies of our political class, Democrats and Republicans. And it's also a movement where we're going to remind people that an injury to one is truly an injury to all. When you harm a public employee, you harm a community. You harm the people around him. When I went to my hometown of Union Grove, Wisconsin, population 3,000, we had the first labor rally ever in Union Grove. It's a very Republican, small rural town. We've never had a labor rally there before. But they're trying to shut down the Girls Correctional Center there, and they're trying to shut down the center for mentally disabled teenagers there. And these are all public employees who work at these places. We went to the Bixby-Hanson American Legion Hall, and 400 people showed up. Never had a labor rally before. We marched down the main street of Union Grove, Wisconsin. And there were, and I know my town well, there were drunk kids standing on top of the R&R bar with their beers in hand on a Tuesday afternoon, watching what was going on. And those drunk kids disappeared, and we're like, uh-oh, where'd they go? What's going on? About 5 minutes later, they came roaring down the main street of Union Grove in their Camaro, windows rolled down, heavy metal music playing, chanting out the window, "Screw Scott Walker!" And I'll tell you, if you can get through to the drunk kids on top of the bar, you can win any fight, anywhere in this country. There is no barrier to building this movement out. But as I walked down that main street in my hometown, I was walking next to a wonderful woman.